My name is Clara. I am 41 years old. Many people say that this is not a young age for a woman. In my town, most women marry before 30. Many of them have 2 or 3 children before they are even 35. When I meet my relatives, they always ask the same questions. Clara, when will you get married? Clara, do you not want children? Clara, are you not lonely at home? I try to smile and answer politely. Sometimes I say, I am fine. I am happy. But deep inside, the truth is not so simple. I live alone in a small apartment near the old town. My job is at a small art gallery. I help customers choose paintings, and I also organize events for local artists. I love my work. I love the quiet colors on the walls and the smell of fresh paint when a new painting arrives. Every morning, I open the gallery, clean the glass, and prepare tea for visitors. It is peaceful. But when the day ends, when the lights are off and I go home, the silence feels heavy. I read books, I listen to music, sometimes I walk by the river. But in the silence of the night, my heart feels empty. I often tell myself, Clara, you are strong. You are independent. You do not need a man to be complete. And this is true in some ways. I can pay my bills. I can travel alone. I can make my own choices. But another truth also lives in me. I want love. I do not want love because of pressure from family. I do not want it because society says I must. I want love because I want someone to share my days with. I want someone who will listen when I speak, someone who will laugh with me, someone who will sit with me in silence and make the silence feel warm. At family dinners, I feel the weight of comparison. My younger cousin, only 30, already has 2 children. My aunt always says, look at her, she is so responsible. She made the right choices early. When she says that, she looks at me with eyes full of question. I know she does not need to speak. The silence speaks enough. One night, after a long dinner with my parents, I went back home and sat near my window. The city lights were shining in the dark sky. I felt tears in my eyes. I was tired of the same questions, the same looks, the same heavy air. I whispered to myself, I wish someone could see me, not my age. I wish someone could love me for who I am, not for what society wants me to be. That night I cried for a long time. Not because I was weak, but because I carried this silent hope for many years. A hope that maybe one day, someone would come into my life. A person who would not care about numbers, but about my heart. At 41, it is easy to believe that love has already passed. Sometimes I almost believed it myself. But there was still a small fire inside me, a little voice that said, it is not too late, Clara. Do not close your heart. Love can arrive when you least expect it. I did not know that soon, this small voice would become true. It was a Friday evening in early autumn. The air was cool, and the sky had a soft golden light. I was very tired after a long week at the gallery. My plan was simple, go home, make some tea, read a book, and sleep early. Then my phone rang. It was my friend Anna. Clara, I have a small dinner at my house tonight. Only a few people, just some friends. Please come. It will be nice. At first, I wanted to say no. I imagined the same questions again. Why are you still single? Do you want to meet someone? My heart felt heavy. But Anna was kind, and she insisted. Finally, I agreed. When I arrived at Anna's house, the living room was warm with soft music. There were candles on the table, and the smell of baked bread filled the air. About 10 people were there. Some I already knew, some were new faces. I smiled politely and tried to relax. Then, near the bookshelf in the corner, I saw him. He was tall, with hair a little gray at the sides. His eyes looked gentle, and his smile was calm, almost shy. He was speaking with another guest, but his voice was warm, low, and kind. For some reason, my eyes kept returning to him. Anna noticed me looking. She walked over with a bright smile. Clara, come here. I want you to meet someone. This is Daniel. He turned to me, and his smile grew wider. Hello, Clara, he said. His voice was soft, but it felt steady, like the sound of the river on a quiet morning. We shook hands. His hand was warm. I felt a small spark, something inside me that I could not explain. We began to talk. At first, just simple questions. Where do you work? I work at a small art gallery, I said. His eyes lit up. Art? That is wonderful. I make furniture. Wood has always been my love. A chair, a table, each one has its own story. We laughed. The conversation started to flow easily, like water. Soon we were talking about books. To my surprise, he loved some of the same writers as me. Old novels, quiet poetry, stories about journeys of the heart. Do you like music? He asked. Yes, I love old jazz songs, I answered. His eyes sparkled. Me too. My father used to play jazz records every Sunday. Those songs still follow me. As the evening passed, I realized something. He was not like other men I had met before. He listened. Truly listened. His eyes stayed on me, not on his phone, not on the room. He asked questions, not because he had to, but because he really wanted to know. At one point, I told him about my work in the gallery. I said, sometimes people come in only to look, not to buy. But I still feel happy to share the art with them. Daniel smiled softly. That says a lot about you, Clara. You care about beauty, not only about money. That is rare. His words touched me. It had been a long time since anyone looked into my heart like that. Time passed quickly. We laughed about travel stories. He told me about a trip to Italy where he got lost in a small village but found the best meal of his life. I told him about the river in my town where I go when I feel lonely. He listened carefully, nodding as if he understood my silence as much as my words. When the dinner was ending, I felt a strange sadness. I did not want the night to stop. Daniel looked at me with his gentle eyes. Clara, may I ask, could I have your phone number? I would like to meet you again. For a moment, my heart jumped. I felt shy, almost like a young girl again. But then I smiled. Yes, I said quickly. Of course. As I gave him my number, I felt something warm spread inside me. It was not only excitement. It was hope. Hope that maybe, after so many years, love was not gone for me. When I walked home that night, the city lights seemed brighter. The cool air felt fresh, not heavy. I was smiling without even trying. For the first time in a long time, I felt a small, shining joy. Something had started. Something I could not yet name, but something real. The next few days after the dinner felt different. My phone was no longer just a silent object on the table. Every time it rang, my heart beat faster. And then, one evening, a message came. Hello, Clara. This is Daniel. Would you like to have coffee with me this weekend? I read it again and again. The words were simple, but they made my cheeks warm. For a moment, I thought of excuses. I was busy. I was tired. Maybe it was too soon. But then I remembered his gentle eyes, his calm voice, and how I had felt at Anna's house. Yes, I typed back. I would love to. That Saturday, we met at a small cafe near the park. The cafe was quiet, with big windows and plants on the tables. When I walked in, Daniel was already there, waiting with 2 cups of coffee. He stood up, smiled, and said, I didn't know what you liked, so I chose something simple, cappuccino. I hope that's okay. I laughed. That's perfect. We sat down, and the conversation began again, as natural as breathing. We spoke about childhood memories, our favorite meals, the books that shaped us. Sometimes we were serious, sometimes we laughed until people in the cafe turned to look. At one point, Daniel told me, Clara, I was married before. My wife passed away many years ago. Since then, I have lived alone. I didn't think I would ever feel ready again. But now, things feel different. I was quiet. His honesty touched me. I could see the pain behind his eyes, but also his strength. I said softly, I understand. Life can be very hard. But maybe, sometimes, life also gives us new chances. He nodded slowly. Yes. Maybe this is one of them. After that day, we began to meet more often. Sometimes we walked in the park, talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes we cooked simple dinners together, pasta, soup, bread with cheese. It was never about fancy food. It was about the feeling of sharing. One evening, as we washed dishes side by side, Daniel said, You know, Clara, I like how quiet you are. Not empty quiet, but peaceful quiet. It makes me calm. I smiled. And I like how steady you are. Like a tree. Strong, but not hard. He chuckled, his eyes warm. A tree and quiet. That sounds like a good match. We both laughed, and in that moment, the kitchen felt like home. But love is never just simple. There were doubts too. At night, alone in my apartment, I sometimes wondered, am I too old for this? I was 41. Daniel was 45. Could love really begin now, when so many people around me already had families, children, long histories together? One day I asked him, almost shyly, "Daniel, do you think it is strange that we are starting this at our age?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said firmly, "Clara, love does not follow a clock. It doesn't care if we are 20, 40, or 60. What matters is that it is real. And what I feel with you is real." His words stayed in my heart. They were like a soft blanket on a cold night. Another small challenge was trust. I had lived alone for many years, and I was used to my own space. Letting someone in was not easy. Sometimes, when Daniel called, I didn't answer right away. Sometimes, when he suggested dinner, I wanted to say no, just to be alone. But each time I saw him, I remembered why I said yes in the first place. His kindness, his patience, his way of making me laugh even when I felt heavy inside. Slowly, I learned to open the doors of my heart again. One Sunday morning, we went to the river. The same place I had told him about at Anna's dinner. The air was fresh, the water moved gently, and the trees reflected in the surface. We sat on a bench, side by side, in silence. Then Daniel reached for my hand. His hand was warm, steady. He didn't say much. Just one sentence. "Clara, I feel happy with you." It was not a big declaration, not dramatic. But for me, it was more powerful than poetry. I squeezed his hand and whispered, "Me too." In that quiet moment, I knew something had changed. This was no longer just coffee, walks, or dinners. It was the beginning of something deeper. As the weeks turned into months, my life felt lighter. I smiled more often. I looked forward to small things. His messages, his laughter, the way he listened. I realized that love was not only about grand gestures. Sometimes it was about sharing a sandwich on a park bench. Sometimes it was about laughing at a broken umbrella in the rain. Sometimes it was simply about knowing someone would stand beside you, no matter what. And for the first time in many years, I allowed myself to believe, maybe love had truly found me. For a while, life with Daniel felt like a dream. Each day had small moments of joy, coffee in the morning, short walks in the evening, gentle conversations that made the world softer. But real life always brings challenges. The first challenge came from people around us. One evening, I had dinner with Anna again. She was happy for me, but she also asked, "Clara, are you sure about this? You have lived alone for so long. Are you ready for change?" Her words stayed in my mind. Was I ready? I had built a safe, quiet life. Letting Daniel in meant opening doors that had been closed for years. It meant taking risks. A few weeks later, Daniel introduced me to one of his old friends. The friend smiled politely, but later I overheard him say, "Isn't it strange to start over at this age? Most people are thinking about retirement, not romance." The words hurt. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. Lines on my face, gray strands of hair. Was I too old for love? Did people see us as foolish? The second challenge was fear, my own fear. One evening, Daniel invited me to his home for dinner. It was a beautiful little house, full of books and photos. On the table, there was a picture of a woman with kind eyes. I knew at once it was his late wife. I felt a knot in my stomach. How could I compete with a memory? Could I ever be enough? During dinner, I was quiet. Finally, Daniel noticed and asked gently, "Clara, is something wrong?" I looked at him and whispered, "She was beautiful. I'm afraid, maybe part of your heart will always belong to her." He was silent for a moment, then he said, "Clara, you are right. Part of my heart will always keep her memory. But that does not mean I cannot love again. Love is not a single candle. It is a flame that can grow. There is space for you too." His words calmed me, but deep inside, the fear still whispered. The third challenge was trust in the future. Daniel once asked me, "Clara, do you ever think about marriage again?" The question froze me. Marriage? At 41, after so many years alone, I was not sure. Marriage sounded heavy, serious, full of responsibilities. I told him honestly, "I don't know, Daniel. I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of making a promise I cannot keep." He held my hand and said softly, "I don't ask for promises today. I only ask for truth. And the truth is, I care for you deeply. The rest, we will discover together." But even with his kindness, doubts grew inside me. Some nights I could not sleep. I imagined what life with Daniel would be like. Sharing every day, every space, every decision. Was I ready to give up my independence? At the same time, I imagined life without him. No messages. No laughter in the park. No warm hand holding mine by the river. The thought made my chest ache. It was as if my heart stood at a crossroads. One path led back to safety, to the quiet life I already knew. The other led to Daniel, to love, but also to risk and the unknown. The turning point came one rainy evening. Daniel and I had planned to meet for dinner, but I was late because of work. By the time I arrived, the rain was heavy. I saw him waiting outside the restaurant, umbrella in hand, completely soaked but still smiling when he saw me. "Clara," he said, his voice warm even in the rain. I was worried. "But I'm glad you came." I looked at him, his hair wet, his jacket dripping, and something inside me broke. This was a man who waited for me in the storm. A man who cared, who stayed, who didn't walk away. At that moment, I knew my answer. That night, after dinner, we walked home together. I stopped under a streetlight and looked at him. My voice was shaking, but I spoke clearly. "Daniel, I have been afraid. Afraid of change, of judgment, of the future. But tonight, I realized something. I don't want a life without you. I choose us. Whatever happens, I choose us." His eyes filled with emotion. He reached for my face and said softly, "Clara, that is all I needed to hear." And under the falling rain, he kissed me. It was not the kiss of young passion, but of deep promise, gentle, steady, full of hope. From that day on, my doubts did not disappear completely. But they no longer controlled me. I knew love was never perfect, never without challenges. But I also knew that love was worth the risk. And with Daniel beside me, I was ready to walk into the unknown.